The server room smells like ozone, dust, and the ghosts of dispatchers who died of stress back in the 90s. It's my favorite smell. It's the smell of things that work because I force them to, not because they want to. I was down there at 6:45 a.m., holding a cup of coffee that tasted like battery acid and despair, watching the blinking green LEDs on the main dispatch node. To the untrained eye, specifically the eyes of the 20-something consultants roaming the halls upstairs in their slim-fit suits, this rack of servers looks like a fire hazard waiting to collect an insurance payout. To me, it's the heartbeat of 500 taxis, 50 medical transport vans, and the entire logistical nervous system of the city. One of the GPS relays for the West Side fleet was hiccuping. Just a little flutter in the signal, like a heart murmur. If I didn't manually reroute the packet data through the secondary node within 10 minutes, 60 drivers were going to lose their navigation feeds right in the middle of the morning rush. I sat on a milk crate I've kept down there since the Bush administration, popped open my laptop, a ThinkPad thick enough to bludgeon a burglar, and started typing. No mouse, just keystrokes, tap, tap, enter, tap. The green light steadied. The murmur was gone. The city kept moving. Nobody upstairs knew. Nobody ever knows. That's the job. You're the janitor of the invisible world. I walked back up to the main floor, my knees popping like bubble wrap. I'm 62 years old. I've been the fleet systems coordinator for 24 years. I survived the transition from radio to digital. I survived the Uber invasion. I survived the great server crash of 2014 by sleeping under my desk for 3 days and subsisting on vending machine crackers. But I wasn't sure I was going to survive Kyle. Kyle is the founder's son. He's 32, wears loafers with no socks, and uses words like synergy, pivot, and optics as if they actually mean something other than I have no idea how a taxi company works. His father, Big Jim, retired to a golf course in Florida 6 months ago, leaving the keys to the kingdom in Kyle's manicured hands. Since then, the office has transformed. The beige cubicles are gone, replaced by an open concept layout that sounds like a cafeteria during a prison riot. We have beanbag chairs nobody sits in because we have bad backs. We have an espresso machine that requires a degree in engineering to operate. And we have Kyle, pacing the floor like a golden retriever who just learned to do cocaine. Before I tell you how this human boat shoe tried to ruin my life and ended up nuking his own inheritance, do me a solid. Hit subscribe and give this a like. It fuels my rage, and trust me, you're gonna want a front row seat to the carnage. I made it to my desk, which Kyle calls a collaborative station even though I collaborate with no one and hate everyone, and saw it. A memo, printed on heavy cardstock. Project Velocity, streamlining human capital for the digital age. I didn't even have to read past the title to know what it meant. Streamlining is corporate speak for firing the people who actually know how to do things. Human capital means me, and digital age means Kyle bought some cloud-based software from a buddy of his at a country club that's going to crash the second it rains. I sat down and looked at my monitors. I have 4 of them. They display the real-time location of every vehicle in the fleet. It's a map of chaos that makes sense only to me. The new modernization plan was sitting on my keyboard. I picked it up with 2 fingers like it was a used tissue. Barb, Kyle's voice boomed across the open floor plan. He doesn't walk, he struts. He bounced over to my desk, holding a green smoothie that looked like pond scum. Did you see the memo? Big things, Barb, big things. Moving to the cloud on Monday. Total migration. No more of that dinosaur tech in the basement. I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. Kyle, I said, my voice sounding like gravel in a blender. The dinosaur tech in the basement is hardwired into the city's medallion compliance server. You can't just migrate it to the cloud. It needs a physical handshake. A biometric sync. Kyle waved a hand dismissively. Details, Barb. That's why we have the consultants. They're wizards, they went to Stanford. Stanford doesn't teach you how to patch a Unix kernel from 1998 that controls the meters in 500 Crown Vics. If you unplug that server without the override key, the car is shut down. It's a security feature. Anti-theft, anti-hack, anti-idiot. We'll figure it out, Kyle grinned, showing teeth that were too white to be natural. You worry too much. You need to vibe with the new energy. By the way, I saw a request in the system for Friday afternoon. Something about a play? My stomach tightened. My granddaughter's play, I said. Charlotte's Web, she's playing a tree. It's a big deal. I put that request in 3 months ago. Your dad approved it before he left. Kyle took a sip of his pond scum. Yeah, about that. With the migration starting Monday, we're gonna need all hands on deck this weekend for prep. Friday is crunch time. I'm gonna need you to cancel that. Don't do babysitting excuses during a pivot. I stared at him. The silence stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. It's not babysitting, I said slowly. It's my PTO. It's earned. It's approved. It's canceled, Kyle said, tapping the memo on my desk. Read the new handbook, Barb. Section 4, Management Discretion. We need team players right now, not whatever this is. He gestured vaguely at my entire existence. Pack a lunch for Friday. It's gonna be a late one. He spun around and bounced away, shouting something at a terrified intern about leveraging TikTok. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, not from fear, from the kind of rage that burns cold. He thought I was just an old lady with a bad attitude and a thick laptop. He didn't know about the fingerprint scanner. He didn't know about the 6-hour Deadman switch I installed after the Russian hack in 2013. He didn't know that without my literal touch, his project velocity was going to hit a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. I opened my drawer and took out a bottle of antacids. I chewed 3 of them. Then I opened the command terminal on my screen. System uptime, 4,320 days. Biometric auth required in 4 hours, 12 minutes. I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to beg. I've been fixing his father's mistakes for 20 years. I've cleaned up messes that would have buried this company. But Kyle wanted to play hardball. He wanted management discretion. I looked at the blinking cursor. Okay, Kyle, I whispered to the screen. Let's see how you vibe with reality. I decided to try the diplomatic route first, which for me usually means not throwing a stapler at someone's head. I walked over to HR. HR used to be Linda, a woman who smoked Virginia Slims and kept a bottle of schnapps in her filing cabinet for emergencies. Linda retired 2 years ago. Now HR is a centralized ticket system managed by a 24-year-old named Braden who wears noise-canceling headphones and communicates exclusively via Slack, even if you are standing directly in front of him. I stood at Braden's desk. He was bobbing his head to some invisible beat, staring at a spreadsheet that I'm 90% sure was a fantasy football league. Braden, I said, nothing. Braden, I barked, using my driver is 5 hours late voice. He jumped, sliding the headphones down to his neck. Whoa, Barb, you gotta ping me first. Jump scare much? My PTO for Friday, I said, leaning on his desk, my knuckles white. Kyle says it's canceled. I have the approval email from Big Jim dated 3 months ago. Print it out, notarize it, whatever you people do, and put it on Kyle's desk. Braden sighed, the long-suffering sigh of someone who has never done manual labor in their life. Yeah, so the thing is, Kyle migrated all the approval protocols to the new dashboard yesterday. Legacy approvals, he made air quotes with his fingers, didn't transfer. It's a clean slate policy. If it's not in the new dashboard, it doesn't exist. My granddaughter exists, Braden. My time off exists. Totally get that, he said, already reaching for his headphones. But Kyle has a lock on the schedule until the migration is done. It's a war room scenario. No leaves, no exceptions. He actually flagged your account specifically. Said you're mission critical. Mission critical, I repeated. The irony tasted like aluminum foil. So I'm too important to leave, but not important enough to listen to? It's just business, Barb. You know how it is. Disruptive innovation requires sacrifice. He smiled, a vacant, corporate smile that made me want to unplug his computer and throw it into the sun. Maybe you can catch the play on Zoom? Do schools do that? I walked away before I committed a felony. The rest of the week was a slow-motion car crash. I watched the consultants, Kyle's wizards, poking around the server closet. They looked like monkeys trying to fix a Swiss watch with a hammer. I saw them tracing cables that went nowhere. I saw them unplugging the redundant power supply for the dispatch radio tower to charge their iPads. I didn't say a word. I just went back to my desk, corrected the voltage drop they caused, and kept the fleet running. Every few hours, Kyle would breeze by. Looking good, Barb. Looking agile? He didn't notice the warnings popping up on the subscreens. He didn't notice the packet loss on the north side grid. He didn't notice that the entire dispatch logic was holding on by a thread I was manually restitching every 60 minutes. Thursday afternoon, I made one last attempt. I cornered Kyle in the break room while he was trying to figure out how to work the new espresso machine. Kyle, I said, I'm going to the play tomorrow. I'm leaving at noon. This isn't a request anymore. He turned around, milk frother dripping onto his suede shoes. His face hardened. It was the first time I saw the real Kyle, not the buzzword-spouting mascot, but the entitled brat who's never heard the word no. Let's be clear, Barbara, he said, dropping the nickname. You are an at-will employee. You serve at the pleasure of this company. If you walk out that door tomorrow during a critical migration phase, you are abandoning your post. That is grounds for immediate termination. For cause, no severance, no unemployment, just a box for your cat pictures. He stepped closer, trying to loom over me. He's 5'9" on a good day. I'm 5'4", but I carry the weight of 3 decades of dealing with angry taxi drivers. I didn't flinch. You really want to play chicken with me, Kyle? I asked quietly. You don't even know how to drive the car. I own the car, he sneered, and I can hire 10 people to replace you by Monday. People who don't smell like an ashtray and actually know what Python is. Decide what's more important, Barb, your little family outing or your pension. He turned back to the coffee machine. Now, how do I get this thing to make a macchiato? I walked back to my desk. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. He had threatened my pension. He had threatened my livelihood. He had called my granddaughter's play a little family outing. I looked at the clock. 4:00 p.m. Thursday. I looked at the biometric scanner built into my keyboard, a rugged, military-grade reader that Big Jim had installed after we lost $1 million in a spoofing attack. It required a fingerprint scan every 6 hours to renew the encryption keys for the fleet dispatch software. If the scan didn't happen, the system assumed the coordinator was incapacitated or compromised. It would lock down. Hard. It's a dead man's switch. I placed my thumb on the scanner. Identity verified, Barbara Lewis. Key renewal successful. Next authorization required, 10 o'clock p.m. I typed in a command, a simple one. I changed the authorization interval. Instead of the usual auto prompt appearing on the main screen, I set it to run in the background. Silent, invisible. Then I set the interval to 12 o'clock p.m. Friday. Noon. Exactly when the curtain went up for Charlotte's Web. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to pull the pin on the grenade, put it in his pocket, and walk away. Friday morning, the air in the office felt like the inside of a pressure cooker. The wizards were running around with Ethernet cables draped over their shoulders like bandoliers. Kyle was shouting into a headset, pacing back and forth in front of the master situational display, a massive wall of screens that I usually kept calm and green. Today was flickering with yellow warning indicators. Why is the latency spiking in Sector 4? Kyle yelled, refresh the cache, clear the cookies, reboot the router. He was shouting random tech words he'd heard in movies. None of those things would fix a latency spike caused by a microwave relay interference, which requires a frequency shift. A shift I usually did automatically while sipping my coffee. Today, I just watched the yellow light blink. Let it blink. I did my work quietly. I answered emails. I organized my files. I wiped down my desk with a Clorox wipe, removing 20 years of grime, coffee rings, and the invisible residue of stress. At 11:30 a.m., I stood up. I put on my coat, a heavy wool thing that smells like winter and old perfume. I picked up my purse. I didn't take my laptop. I didn't take my badge. I left them on the desk, right next to the picture of my granddaughter, Sophie. Where are you going? It was Braden from HR. He had taken off his headphones. He looked nervous. Lunch, I lied, and then I have an appointment. Kyle's gonna flip, Braden whispered. The migration starts in 2 hours. Good luck with that, I said. I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. The drive to the school was surreal. My phone started buzzing 5 minutes after I left the building. First it was the office line, then Braden, then the dispatch supervisor, Tony. Tony is a good guy, but he's helpless without me. I let it ring. I parked the car in the school lot. It was raining, a cold drizzle that turns everything gray, but inside the school auditorium it was warm. It smelled like floor wax and cheap popcorn. Parents were shuffling into seats, holding bouquets of flowers wrapped in crinkly plastic. It was real. It was human. It was the opposite of the sterile, buzzing hellscape I had just left. I found a seat in the back row. I wanted to see everything. My phone vibrated against my hip, a text message, then another, then a third. I pulled it out. Kyle, 12:05 p.m. Where the hell are you? Kyle, 12:07 p.m. The GPS grid is lagging. Get back here now. Kyle, 12:15 p.m. Cancel your tow or pack your desk. I stared at the screen. The lights in the auditorium dimmed. The heavy velvet curtains on stage began to rustle. A hush fell over the crowd of parents. Another text. Kyle, 12:16 p.m. You're done, Barb. Don't bother coming back. I'm wiping your access. We'll mail you your personal crap. You just cost yourself a pension. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was lightness. It was the feeling of a heavy pack being cut from your shoulders and dropping off a cliff. He thought he was wiping my access. I looked at the time on my phone. 12:17 p.m. Back at the office. The silent timer I had set would have hit 0 at noon. The system would have pinged the biometric scanner for my thumbprint. It would have waited 60 seconds for response. Then 60 more. Then it would have entered grace period level 1. By now, 17 minutes past the deadline, the system would be entering grace period level 2. This is where the dispatch logic starts to throttle. It stops accepting new ride requests to preserve system integrity while it waits for the admin, me, to confirm they are alive. I typed a reply to Kyle. My thumbs moved slowly, deliberately. Barb, I'm at the play. Sophie is a tree. She's very good. By the way, the fleet dispatcher needs my fingerprint every 6 hours. You have about 30 minutes before the fail-safe kicks in. It's hardwired. You can't bypass it without a reboot, and a reboot takes 4 hours. 500 taxis are about to turn into pumpkins. Good luck. I hit send. Then I turned my phone off, entirely, power down, black screen. On stage, the curtain rose. A cardboard barn painted in bright red stood crookedly in the center. Little kids in animal costumes waddled out. And there in the back, standing tall with green cardboard leaves stapled to her shirt, was Sophie. She was the best damn tree I had ever seen. I settled into the uncomfortable plastic chair. I crossed my arms. I took a deep breath of the floor wax air. And I smiled. Let me explain what was happening to Kyle while I watched a 7-year-old in a pig costume recite lines about spiderwebs. Most people think the cloud is this magical, fluffy place where data lives. It's not. The cloud is just someone else's computer. And in our case, the cloud Kyle loved so much was just a fancy interface sitting on top of a pile of rusty spaghetti code junk that lived in our basement. We call it the Beast. The Beast is a Unix-based dispatch server built in 1999. It runs on a language that looks like ancient hieroglyphics. It talks to the taxis via radio frequency and cellular data packets. It handles the meters, the GPS, the credit card processing, and the medallion compliance logs. In 2013, we got hit by a ransomware attack. Some hackers in Eastern Europe locked up the fleet and demanded 50 grand in Bitcoin. Big Jim didn't pay. Instead, he hired a paranoia-fueled security contractor named Crazy Dave, who is currently in federal prison for something unrelated, to hardwire a physical security layer. Dave didn't trust passwords. He said passwords could be stolen. He trusted flesh. He installed a biometric loop. The server requires a confirmed admin fingerprint every 6 hours. It's a heartbeat signal. If the heartbeat stops, the beast assumes the control center has been overrun. It assumes a hostile takeover. So it executes Protocol Turtle. Protocol Turtle is exactly what it sounds like. The system pulls its head in. It severs connections to the outside world to protect the core database. 1. It stops sending GPS data to the apps. 2. It locks the credit card terminals in the cars to prevent fraud. 3. Sends a return to base message to every digital meter in the fleet. Kyle, in his infinite wisdom, probably saw the first warning pop up right after he fired me. Error, biometric auth timeout. Please scan admin thumb. I can picture it perfectly. He's standing there in his loafers, staring at the screen. He probably tried to click cancel. There is no cancel button. He probably tried to Control-Alt-Delete. The beast doesn't care about your Windows shortcuts. Then, he likely screamed at the consultants. Bypass it, hack it, but you can't hack a hardware interrupt from a remote terminal. You have to be at the keyboard and you have to have my thumb, or you have to rip the hardware out and rebuild the server kernel from scratch. Rebuilding the kernel takes about 4 to 6 hours. Restoring the database takes another 3. Syncing the cars takes 2 more. That's 12 hours of downtime, on a Friday afternoon, in the rain. With a major convention in town, the dental hygienists of America were swarming the city, and they tip well. Back in the auditorium, Sophie waved her leafy branches. The crowd clapped politely. I wondered if Kyle was sweating yet. I wondered if the wizards were starting to realize that their Stanford degrees didn't cover legacy hardware panic mode. I checked my watch. 12:45 p.m. By now, the first phase of Protocol Turtle would be engaging. The dispatchers. Poor Tony and the team would see their screens freeze. The maps would stop updating. The little green car icons would turn gray, then vanish one by one. The phones would start ringing. 500 drivers suddenly blind. Hey, dispatch, my meter just locked up. Dispatch, I can't process this guy's card. Dispatch, my screen says system compromised, return to base. What the hell is going on? And Kyle would be realizing that firing the only person who knows how to feed the beast was a tactical error on par with invading Russia in the winter. I reached into my purse and pulled out a roll of lifesavers. I popped a cherry one in my mouth. It tasted like artificial victory. Intermission. The lights came up. Parents shuffled around, stretching their legs and checking their phones. I saw a few frowns. Honey, the Uber app is spinning. It says no cars available. Try Lyft. Same thing, surge pricing just hit 400%. I kept my head down. I didn't want to be recognized as the architect of their inconvenience, even though technically I was just the retired architect who took the blueprints with her. I walked to the lobby to get a bottle of water. I turned my phone back on, just for a second. I told myself it was to check the time, but really I wanted to see the blast radius. The phone nearly vibrated out of my hand. 34 missed calls, 42 texts, 4 voicemails, most were from the office numbers, but one text caught my eye. It was from Tony, the head night dispatcher who was covering the day shift. Tony is a good kid. He smokes Parliament lights and has a tattoo of a carburetor on his forearm. Tony, 1:10 p.m, Barb, it's a massacre. The screens are all red, drivers are screaming. Kyle threw a chair. He's telling us to reboot the internet. I think he's crying. Please help, I felt a twinge of guilt. Tony didn't deserve this. The drivers didn't deserve this. Most of them are immigrants working 12-hour shifts to feed families. They were losing money every minute the wheels weren't turning. But if I went back now, if I saved Kyle, nothing would change. He'd pat me on the head, call me a rock star, and then fire me next week when the consultants figured out a workaround. No, the fire had to burn itself out. The structure had to collapse so they could see the rot in the foundation. I texted Tony back. Barb, I can't fix it remotely. Tony, it's biometric. Kyle fired me. I'm a civilian now. Tell the drivers to switch to cash and paper logs if they can, but the meters are bricked. I'm sorry. I put the phone back in my purse. The second act was starting. Charlotte was spinning her web. Some pig, the web said. In my mind, I saw the server logs at the office. System lockdown initiated. Medallion compliance. Failed. Reporting status to city regulator. Pending. That was the kicker, the state compliance clause. In our city, if a taxi fleet's tracking system goes offline for more than 60 minutes, it triggers an automatic report to the Department of Transportation. It's a safety regulation. That report would have gone out at 1:17 p.m. That meant the City Hall bureaucrats were getting involved. And if there is one thing that scares a business owner more than a lost profit, it's a city council audit. Kyle wasn't just losing money now. He was losing his license to operate. I watched the spider on stage die. It's a sad part of the story. The kids in the audience were sniffling. I felt a little sad too. I had spent 24 years keeping that system alive. I had patched it with digital duct tape and love. I knew its quirks. I knew it slowed down when it rained. I knew it liked the server room to be exactly 68 degrees. And now I was letting it die. But then I remembered Kyle's face when he said, "We don't do babysitting excuses." I remembered the Project Velocity memo. I remembered the sound of his loafers squeaking on the floor. I dried my eyes. It was just allergies. The dust in the auditorium was terrible. The play ended at 2:30 p.m. Thunderous applause. Sophie bowed so low her branches swept the floor. I was the first one standing, clapping until my hands stung. Afterward, there was a cast party in the cafeteria. Cupcakes with green frosting, lukewarm fruit punch. I sat at a small table with Sophie, wiping grease paint off her cheek. "Did you see me, Nana?" she asked, her mouth full of sugar. "I saw you, baby. You were the tallest tree in the forest." My phone was buzzing again, continuous, violent buzzing. It was dancing across the cafeteria table. Sophie looked at it. "Does that work?" "Nope," I said, flipping it over. "I don't work there anymore." "Oh, does that mean you can come to my soccer game next week?" "You bet your butt I can," but I knew what was happening. At the office, the denial phase was over. Panic had set in. Here is what I learned later from Tony. Around 2 p.m., Kyle had ordered the consultants to physically bypass the biometric scanner. He thought it was just a USB peripheral. He thought they could just unplug it. Crazy Dave, the paranoid security architect, had anticipated this. The scanner wasn't plugged into a USB port. It was soldered directly into the motherboard of the controller unit, and he had wired a tamper switch into the casing. If you try to pry the scanner off or open the chassis without the admin key, zap, the kill switch triggers. It dumps the encryption keys. It wipes the local cache. It turns the server into a very expensive, very heavy paperweight. Wizards had tried to open the case with a screwdriver. Tony said there was a spark, a loud pop, and then the smell of burning silicon filled the basement. The screens didn't just freeze, they went black. The backup radio system, dead. The phones, dead. The entire building went dark. At 3 p.m., a black SUV pulled up to the school curb. I saw it through the cafeteria window. It wasn't an Uber. It was a Lincoln Navigator. I recognized the driver. It was Kyle. He had tracked my phone, or maybe he just remembered where the play was. He stormed into the school cafeteria, looking like a man who had just survived a plane crash. His hair was wild. His tie was undone. He was sweating through his dress shirt. The parents went silent. The drama teacher looked alarmed. Kyle scanned the room, his eyes wild. He spotted me in the corner, holding a half-eaten cupcake. He marched over, stepping on a discarded coloring book. "Barb," he wheezed. He sounded out of breath. "Barb, you have to come back." I took a slow bite of the cupcake. "I thought I was fired, Kyle, for cause. Isn't that what you said?" "I didn't mean it," he stammered. "It was heat of the moment, stress, you know how it is. Look, the system is down, everything, the consultants, they broke something. There was a spark. We have zero comms with the fleet. The city is calling. The airport is calling. I have news vans parked outside the office." He grabbed the edge of the table. "I will double your salary, triple it. Just come fix it." I looked at Sophie. She was looking at Kyle with the honest, cutting judgment of a 7-year-old. "Who is the sweaty man, Nana?" I looked back at Kyle. "I can't fix it, Kyle, not anymore. Your boys fried the motherboard. I can smell it on you. You smell like ozone and stupidity. There has to be a backup," he screamed, his voice cracking. "There's always a backup." "There is," I said calmly. "But it's in a safety deposit box at the bank. And the bank closes in." I checked my watch. 50 minutes, and the only person with the key is the registered fleet administrator. Kyle's eyes widened. "That's you. Go get it. We can make it." "Actually," I said, wiping frosting from my lip. "The registered administrator is your father, Big Jim. Did you bother to update the paperwork when he retired?" "No, that's a shame." Kyle turned pale. "Dad is in Florida. He's on a cruise. He doesn't have cell service." "Well," I said, standing up and putting on my coat. "Sounds like you have a problem. Come on, Sophie. Let's go get some ice cream." I walked past him. He stood there, surrounded by children in animal costumes, looking utterly destroyed. "Barb," he yelled after me, "you can't do this. This is sabotage." I stopped at the door. "No, Kyle, sabotage is when you break something on purpose. This is just management discretion." By 5 p.m., it was on the local news. I sat in my recliner with a glass of Pinot Grigio, the cheap stuff with the screw top, and watched Channel 4. The reporter was standing outside the airport terminal. Behind her, a line of angry travelers stretched for 3 blocks. Taxis were double parked, abandoned by drivers who couldn't clock in or out. "Chaos at Hopkins International today," the reporter said, her hair whipped by the wind. City cab, largest fleet in the metro area, has suffered a catastrophic system failure. Hundreds of passengers are stranded. We reached out to CEO Kyle Henderson for comment, but have received no response. They cut to a shot of the office, my office. There were news vans indeed, and a police cruiser. Probably there because a driver threw a brick through the window. I couldn't blame them. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Miss Lewis?" A deep, gravelly voice. "Speaking, this is Councilman Miller, District 9. I sat up straighter. Miller was the head of the Transportation Committee. He was the guy who signed the medallion contracts. Hello, Councilman. Barbara, I'm sitting here with the deputy mayor. We're trying to understand why 40% of the city's transit capacity just vanished. I called your office and some kid named Braden told me, and I quote, the vibes are off. Is that accurate? I laughed. A sharp, barking laugh. Vibes are definitely off, Councilman. The server is fried, the backup protocols were ignored, and the expertise required to fix it was? Let go. I see, Miller said. The ice in his voice could have frozen the Cuyahoga River. Barbara, can you fix it? Not tonight, I said. The hardware is toast. It needs a full rebuild. New server, restore from cold storage. It's a 48-hour job minimum. And that's if you have the data tapes. And where are the data tapes? A safety deposit box under James Henderson's name. Jim is in the Bahamas, Miller said. I know, I tried to call him, then you're stuck, I said. Unless someone had a personal backup, a ghost image of the drive, strictly for educational purposes, kept on an encrypted drive at home, just in case. There was a long silence on the line. I took a sip of wine. Barbara, Miller said softly. What do you want? I don't want anything from you. Councilman, you're a good customer. But Kyle needs to learn. The city runs on sweat and diesel, not vibes. He broke the machine because he didn't respect the mechanic. Until he understands that the cars don't move. I'll call you back, Miller said. I hung up. I went to my closet. In the back, inside a shoebox labeled TAX Receipts 2018, was a ruggedized external hard drive. I'm a hoarder. Digital and physical. I keep everything. Every version of the kernel, every driver log, every line of code. I had done a full mirror of the system on Tuesday, just because I had a bad feeling. I held the drive in my hand. It was heavy, cold, it was the heart of the city, and I was holding it hostage. I went back to the TV. They were showing Kyle now. He was being escorted out of the building by 2 police officers, probably for his own protection against the mob of angry drivers. He looked small. He wasn't strutting anymore. I felt a pang of something. Pity? No, it was the satisfaction of a math equation balancing out. Action firing the expert. Reaction, total collapse. Sum, 0. I poured another glass of wine. Saturday morning. The sun came up, but the taxis didn't move. I slept in until 9 a.m. It was glorious. I made pancakes for Sophie. We watched cartoons. I ignored the news. At 10:30 a.m., my landline rang. Nobody calls the landline unless someone died or they are selling extended car warranties. I picked it up. Hello, Barb. The voice was unmistakable. It sounded like gravel tumbling in a cement mixer. It was Big Jim. Jim, I said, I thought you were on a boat. I was, he grunted. Helicoptered me to Miami. Just landed. I've been briefed. Councilman Miller called me. The board called me. My lawyers called me. He paused. I could hear him lighting a cigar. Man has had 3 heart attacks and still smokes cohibas. He's an idiot, Barb, Jim said. My son? He's a goddamn idiot. I tried to give him a shot. I thought the MBA would help. Turns out it just taught him how to break things faster. He fired me, Jim, I said. Cancelled my PTO. Threatened my pension. Then he fried the motherboard. I know, Jim sighed. I saw the report. The company is bleeding out, Barb. We've lost the airport contract. The medical transport contract is in breach. We're looking at millions in fines. The board wants to liquidate. That's a shame, I said, flipping a pancake. Barb, don't give me that. You have the ghost drive. Miller told me. You always were paranoid. It's why I hired you. I have it, I admitted. Name your price, Jim said. I'm firing Kyle. He's out. I'm putting the CFO in charge until we find a new CEO. But we need the system up. Today. Now. I turned off the stove. I'm not coming back as an employee, Jim. I'm done with the daily grind. I'm done with the fluorescent lights and the bad coffee. Consultant, Jim said immediately. Independent contractor. You set your hours, you set your fee. I want a written apology from Kyle, I said. Nar text, a letter, signed, admitting he was wrong, and I want it framed in the lobby. Done, Jim said. He's writing it right now. He's crying, but he's writing it. And the money, I said. It's going to be expensive. It's a weekend call-out. Emergency rates, name it. $10,000, I said. A month, an hour, I said. 6-hour minimum, plus a retainer for future maintenance. $5,000 a month just to keep my phone on. Silence on the line, then a low chuckle. You're robbing me, Barb. I'm saving you, Jim. The fines from the city are $50,000 a day. You do the math. Fine, Jim said. Get down there. Fix it. The check is already cut. I'll be there in an hour, I said. I have to finish breakfast with my granddaughter. I hung up the phone. Sophie looked at me. Was that the sweaty man again? No, I smiled. That was the sweaty man's dad. He's very sorry. Are we rich now, Nana? We're doing okay, kiddo. We're doing okay. I walked into the office at noon on Saturday. It looked like a crime scene. The collaborative workstations were littered with empty Red Bull cans and pizza boxes. The consultants were gone, fled back to whatever consultancy firm spawned them. The silence was heavy. Kyle was at his desk, or what used to be his desk. He was putting a Newton's cradle into a cardboard box. He looked 10 years older than he did yesterday. His expensive shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. He looked up when I walked in. He opened his mouth to say something. I didn't stop walking. I didn't look at him. To me, he was just another piece of office furniture being moved out. I went straight to the stairs, down to the basement. The smell of ozone was stronger down here. The burnt motherboard smell. Tony was there, sitting on my milk crate, looking like he hadn't slept in 30 hours. When he saw me, he stood up. He looked like he wanted to hug me. Barb, he choked out. Thank God. Move over, Tony, I said gently. I looked at the server rack. It was dark, dead. I pulled the external hard drive from my purse. I plugged it into the secondary emergency port, the one the consultants didn't know existed because it was hidden behind a false panel I installed in 2008. I pulled out my laptop. I connected via the console cable. Terminal active. Boot sequence initiated. Restore from external source, y/, and I typed Y. I hit enter. The fan's word to life. A low hum filled the room. It was the sound of the beast waking up. The screens flickered. Then, text started scrolling. Green on black, beautiful cascading code, loading kernel, mounting database, verifying medallion hash. I waited. The percentage bar crawled across the screen. 98%, 99%, complete. Then the biometric prompt appeared. Admin authentication required. I placed my thumb on the scanner, the backup one I kept in my purse for emergencies. Beep. Access granted. Upstairs on the main floor. Phones started ringing, all of them at once. A cacophony of bells. I heard cheering, actual cheering from the few dispatchers who had stayed. I watched the main map on my screen. The gray dots turned green. One by one, the taxis came back to life. The heart started beating again. I unplugged my drive. I patted the server chassis. Good girl, I whispered. I walked back upstairs. Kyle was gone. His desk was empty. The CFO, a woman named Sharon who I had always liked. Standing there, she handed me an envelope. The check, she said, and the apology letter. I took the envelope. I didn't open it. I knew what was in it. Thanks, Sharon. Call me if it hiccups, but don't call me before 9 a.m. I walked out of the building. The rain had stopped. I saw a city cab taxi pull up to the curb. The driver, a guy named Mustafa who always brought me baklava on Christmas, rolled down the window. Barb, he shouted. The meter, it works. I fixed it, Mustafa, I said. You are magic, he grinned. Where you go, I take you free ride. I looked at the cab. I looked at the office building. No thanks, Mustafa, I said. I think I'll walk. I need the fresh air. I started walking down the street. I had $10,000 in my pocket. I had my dignity. And I had a Sunday off. I put my headphones in. I didn't listen to a podcast. I pulled up a video on YouTube. Danny DeVito eating a hard-boiled egg. I laughed. The city was moving again. And for the first time in 24 years, I wasn't carrying it on my back. I was just walking. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.